What's that old worn-out saying? I didn't make a lot of money, but I had a lot of fun. Yeah, that's been the story of my life for the last 50 years. I suppose if I had kept going in one direction, instead of making a bunch of wrong turns, or at other times had I made a turn or two instead of going straight, I could have done much better with my life. But I didn't. Whatever I did, as Steve McQueen said in that ultimate cool Western movie, The Magnificent Seven, it seemed like a good idea at the time. I had a lot of fun, didn't get rich, but making a fortune in fool's gold wasn't my goal. Making a difference somehow was, and I think I did. But that's fuel for other stories later on. For now, I'll just get back to rambling on about the fun I had back in the day. 46 years ago, in March and April of 1975, along with Brother Jim and Bucky Andrews, I went and took a course at the local BOCES institution over on the other side of Goshen, New York. BOCES, for those of you who never got into technical school education, stands for Board of Cooperative Educational Services, a place where you went to learn a trade. I took a driver's course to obtain a Class 1 commercial driver's license. Nowadays, it's called a Class A license. This particular license gives its bearer the privilege and, more importantly, the responsibility of driving big rig trucks. How I remember the when of that exact milepost in my life is easy. I had to skip one class because I was at Horton Memorial Hospital in Middletown, New York, witnessing the birth of my daughter, Rebecca. I guess I just gave her age away. Sorry about that, daughter. Anyway, over the next 22 years, I could count on one hand how many times I actually used my CDL. Brother Jim went home and used his to run grain trucks for our old man for a few years. Buck eventually ended up driving full-time. It wasn't until I went to work for Rosedale Nurseries in 1997 when I finally, on a regular basis, got behind the wheel of something bigger than a pickup truck. That's when the real fun began, and it seemed like almost every time I went out in a truck, some sort of excitement always rode shotgun. Sometime later on, I'll come up with a bunch of tall tales about my adventures hauling trees and equipment for Rosedale. After all, of all the crazy stuff I did throughout my life, the craziest and most fun of all happened while working at Rosedale. To be honest, I had so much fun there, I never considered it work. My old pal and boss, Paul Henke, would wholeheartedly agree with that. That is, the not working part. Hey, as the old saying goes, it beat working for a living. All that is the stuff for future episodes. For now, I'm going to tell the tale of my first trucking adventure. That happened nearly 15 years before my time at Rosedale. It was about 5 years after I got my license when I made my first run in a truck of any size. Of course, wouldn't you know it, that rascal Excitement waited patiently for its first ride-along. Middletown Agway's fertilizer plant was short on drivers one day, which happened to be an unusually slow day for me in the service department. Since it was known I had a CDL, they asked me to take out a load of fertilizer. I was told I would have no problem finding where I had to go since the customer happened to be my father, right next door to my house on Mills Road outside of Walden. Seemed like a simple enough assignment, so I enthusiastically agreed to take out the load. Sounded like fun to me, and it was. Except for a very brief delay along the way. I was moving along down the grade out of the winding hills on Route 17K heading east towards the village of Montgomery. Ahead on the right, I could see a large, thick pillar of smoke and flames coming out of a barn very close to the road. Fire trucks and police vehicles were lining both sides of the highway, forming a narrow gauntlet on the way down the hill. There was no other traffic going through at the moment, but instead of rushing me through, a New York State trooper flagged me down and stopped me within just a few yards of the fire. I could feel the heat, and I could see sparks falling all around the truck, so I stuck my head out the window and started yelling towards the trooper. But he ignored my complaints and just stood there with his hands up, motioning me to stay put. As they say, drastic situations require drastic measures, or something like that. So I climbed out of the truck and calmly walked up nose to nose with him so he would have no trouble hearing what I had to say. I spoke as clearly as I could with careful diction and enunciation so he could understand the situation caused by my presence at that particular location. So I says to him, "Sir, I have 10 tons of ammonium nitrate on that truck. How long am I going to be parked here?" You know, it's most interesting and educational to see a man's eyes bug out of his head and swallow his tongue at the same time, particularly a man in a state trooper's uniform. It took him a moment or two to relocate his eyeballs and to get his tongue out of his throat. When he did, I was quickly ordered to get the hell out of here. The narrow gauntlet was instantly cleared of fire hoses, emergency personnel, and anything else that would impede my rapid exit from the scene. I went on my way, delivered my load, and took a different road back to Middletown. Now, at the risk of getting too philosophical, I feel compelled to say this. Truck driving is a lot like life in general. You start out every day with a destination to go to. You're loaded up and fueled up. You have everything you need to get to where you have to go. And then, somewhere along the way, the barn catches fire.